There was once a young woman named Aisha, born in a modest family in a small town, who grew up believing that love was the only treasure worth keeping in this world, for she had little else to hold on to. She was gentle, humble, and beautiful in a quiet way, not the kind of beauty that demanded attention but one that made people feel peace around her. When she met Raza, a man from the city with promises of wealth, comfort, and a bright future, she thought her destiny had finally smiled upon her. Raza came from a respected family, and though they looked down on Aisha for her simplicity and lack of riches, they accepted her because Raza insisted he loved her. For Aisha, marriage was the dream she had longed for, but she did not know that her real test of life had just begun. In the early days of marriage, Raza seemed caring, but his family never missed a chance to remind her she wasn't good enough for them. They would criticize her cooking, her clothes, her background, and every small thing she did, but she endured it all with a smile, believing that patience and kindness could melt even the hardest hearts. When she became pregnant, her heart overflowed with joy, for she thought a child would bring love and unity into the house. She dreamed of holding her baby and showing Raza's family that love was greater than money, but little did she know that her happiness would soon be shattered. On the day she gave birth, her heart was full of prayers, and when the nurse handed her a beautiful baby girl, Aisha's tears rolled down with joy. She thought Raza and his family would finally see how blessed they were, but the moment they learned it was a girl, their faces darkened. Instead of celebrating new life, they muttered curses, whispering that a daughter was a burden, not a blessing. Raza, the man she thought would always protect her, turned cold and distant. In his eyes, the daughter was not an heir, not someone who could carry his family's name with pride. Aisha begged him to look at their child's innocent face, to see the miracle of life, but he refused, and his mother shouted that Aisha had failed them by bringing a girl into the world. Within days, the house that once seemed like a promise of love turned into a prison of cruelty. They stopped giving her food on time, insulted her whenever she held her baby, and one night, in a storm of anger, Raza told her she was no longer his wife. He dragged her out with their little daughter still in her arms, leaving her on the streets in the dead of night. The rain poured heavily, soaking her and the baby, but no one in that house looked back. With trembling hands, she shielded her newborn, crying not for herself but for the innocent life who had no fault. She walked barefoot through the muddy road, heartbroken, shattered, and abandoned, wondering why fate had punished her for being a mother to a daughter. But what Aisha didn't know was that somewhere, someone had been waiting for this moment to step into her life again. Years ago, before Raza, there was a man named Hamza, who had loved Aisha deeply, but being poor back then, he couldn't win her family's approval. Life separated them, and while Aisha was forced into a marriage with Raza, Hamza worked day and night, climbing the ladder of success until he became one of the wealthiest men in the city. He had everything, businesses, cars, houses, but no companion to share his heart with, for he had never forgotten the girl who once smiled at him with kindness when he was nothing. Hamza's heart still carried the memory of Aisha, though he believed she had moved on and was living happily. Fate, however, had other plans. On that rainy night, as Hamza returned from a business trip, his car slowed at a corner where he saw a young woman holding a baby, shivering under the storm. He almost drove past, but something in her face made him stop. He stepped out with his umbrella, walked closer, and froze in shock. The woman before him was none other than Aisha, the only woman he had ever loved. Her clothes were torn, her hair stuck to her face, and yet her eyes carried the same quiet innocence. He could not believe that the woman who once had dreams of happiness was now standing abandoned in the rain. Aisha tried to hide her tears, ashamed of her condition, but Hamza gently placed his coat around her shoulders, his eyes burning with both anger at what she must have suffered and pain for her misery. When he asked her what happened, Aisha broke down, telling him everything, how Raza and his family had rejected her and her newborn just because she gave birth to a girl. Hamza's heart ached with rage at the cruelty, but when he looked at the tiny baby in her arms, he felt an overwhelming love, as though fate had given him a reason to protect them both. That night, Hamza took Aisha and her daughter with him, giving them shelter, food, and comfort she had long been denied. For Aisha, it felt like breathing after drowning, but she was still afraid, unsure whether she deserved kindness after being thrown away. Yet Hamza reassured her with every word and every action, making her realize that not every man measured a woman's worth by wealth or the gender of a child. The story had just begun, and while Aisha believed her life was ruined, she did not yet know that the same daughter who was rejected would one day become the reason for her greatest happiness and respect. And dear viewers, this is only the beginning of Aisha's emotional journey, a journey that will take her from rejection to redemption, from pain to power, and from being abandoned to being cherished. If you are touched by her story and want to know what happens next, how fate reunites old love, how a mother's strength changes destinies, and how a daughter becomes the light of honor, then don't forget to subscribe to this channel, for Chapter 2 will reveal the shocking twists that will leave you breathless.